All of the things that men do that women complain about, generally, I'm those plus one.
Something so overwhelming has happened that you just feel like you just can't operate. Even people on the outside might think you're functioning, but inside you just can't handle it anymore.
Lots of sayings within cycling, but one of the things is that cycling never becomes easy, you just get faster. But I'm not one of those people who has their work emails on their phone. I deliberately avoid that because I don't want to be interrupted. The things that really winds me up, and everybody who knows me will say this, is traffic. And sport I find really difficult to watch now because I can't predict the outcome and I can't in any way affect the outcome.
The other side is your parasympathetic nervous system, and that you can think about as being like the handbrake on your stress response.
This is a 20-minute journey. Why have you all come at the same time as me? Because if you came at different times, we could all make it in 20 minutes.
Okay, so I'm Nick Whitehouse. I'm a trauma-informed coach and trainer. I'm also a hypnotherapist. Used to be a head teacher, and I'm here at Ward Rider to have a chat with Richard. And Richard's here to talk to us, and we're going to have a go at mapping your nervous system, and hopefully through that we'll be helping some people out there who might be watching, listening, and supporting them in their mental health or things that might be going on in their workplace that might be on their mind. First of all, Richard, tell me a bit about yourself. How long have you been working at Ward Rider, and what's your background?
I'm relatively new at Ward Rider. I've been here since April of this year. I'm a personal injury lawyer. I'm from Coventry. I've worked in and around Coventry all of my professional life. Qualified as a solicitor in 1990, so I guess I've been doing it for 35 years. Most of that time it's been personal injury. Dabbled in a bit of crime to begin with. I think lots of solicitors enter the profession thinking that crime is where it's at because they want to help people. But I moved away from crime because it became too difficult for me. I wasn't very good, but I was a much better personal injury lawyer, and I've stayed there. And I think this is probably my third ever job.
Okay.
So, relatively, I like things to be relatively stable.
So you stay in a job for a long time.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that through? It's always been complete plain sailing for you, or is it because you've had issues that you've just overcome and you've stuck at it and you've sort of been determined to get through anything that's cropped up and stuck with a company over time?
I wouldn't say that I've never had issues. I think any solicitor will always have issues. The job can be incredibly stressful. But I've stuck at it because that's just. I think I'm from an age where people did stick at things.
Yeah.
You know, just not necessarily stiff upper lip, but you know, I'm of an age when everybody was getting gold watches. My grandfather got a gold watch, my dad got a gold watch because everybody served 25, 30, 40 years with the same employer, and that was always the way. I've never really intended to move around. I know there are lots of people who will have a job for a year and a half and then move on to try and find something slightly better. I've always been really happy with what I've been doing. Things haven't always worked out to the best, but I've stuck at things. And the first job I ever had, I was already looking forward or looking through to when I might make progression within that job, but I didn't actually consider in that job that I would be moving on to somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'd always thought that would potentially be a job for life.
Yeah.
And I think with a lot of solicitors my age, that is relatively common, that people think that they will stay there or doing something very similar for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and I think crucial to that, we might pick up on that in a bit, but a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose and an attachment to an organism that you might be growing and developing, and you're a part of that,
Yes.
can be really grounding, can be a real sort of sense of, can make you feel like you belong in an organisation and you are part of that family, and that's a sense of reassurance. Thank you very much, Richard. I thought what we might do then is find out a little bit about the nervous system and the brain structure and that kind of thing, and then we'll link that to how there might be a stress response and also what makes you feel safe and centered and grounded and that kind of thing. And to do that, I'm going to use a good little sort of example, which is Dan Siegel's Brain in the Palm of Your Hand. I don't know if you might have come across it before.
No, I've never heard of that.
So what we're going to do, and people at home, you can do that if you want to, is make a fist, okay? And on that fist, that is a bit like the cross-section of your brain. And the front part of our brain here, which is the sort of neocortex, and if in a hypnotherapy situation, when I'm with someone in a solution-focused mode, I want people in the left prefrontal cortex, because that's where they're thinking clearly, making reasoned decisions, they're being positive, problem solving, all the things that you'd want at ward and rider and in any position where people are able to be productive. That's the best place to be. Now in the middle of the brain here we've got the limbic system, and in there we've got three main players, and you've got the amygdala. Is that something you've come across before?
No.
So the amygdala is about the size of an almond.
Okay.
And if you were to use a sort of a metaphor for it, the amygdala is a bit like your safety officer in your brain.
Okay.
It's sensing whether you're safe. And if it senses danger, it's going to send a message to your hypothalamus, which is in that limbic system, to send a message down your what's called your HPA axis, your hypothalamus, your pituitary and your adrenals, to make a stress response. Okay. And what happens then is when that's activated, you won't be able to access your neocortex. You won't be able to think straight. You won't be able to get a straight answer out of yourself or anyone else in that situation until you've come back to ground and re-engage that neocortex again.
Okay.
So that's a good way of thinking about how you might be dealing with a client who might have had a stressful thing that's happened to them in terms of getting the answers out of them, but also yourself as an employee, or as a family member or a friend or a general human being.
Okay.
Any reflections on that so far? Anything that sort of pops out from that?
Well, certainly, if you're talking about a stressful situation, I can understand what you're saying about the issues with actually putting aside how stressful a situation might be and looking through that to find a solution to that situation. When I would always say that I'm somebody who catastrophizes. If I have an issue at work or in general life, I tend not to think about how I can face that issue and deal with it until I've worked out that at the end of this, everything that I know and value is at an end, because it's all going to go horribly wrong in a terrible domino effect. And before I know it, I'm convinced that I've lost my house, I've let the whole family down, all because I've made a very simple mistake or I've got something very challenging at work. So in terms of sort of fight or flight response, I can't find situations where I've come across that myself. But certainly in stressful situations, I know that there are times when I need to sit back and think, hold on, stop worrying about what has or what might happen. Think about what you can do with this and control this response that suggests that things are going to go horribly wrong. Forget all of that and just think about, well, actually, I can deal with this situation. I've got the knowledge, I've got the experience, and if I haven't, I've got friends or colleagues who can help me get through this and sort out the answer to that, rather than panicking, which is what I tend to do, and immediately think that the very, very worst is going to happen. So, yeah, I can sort of relate to that. It's almost like a sort of fog comes over you, and you just can't actually deal with the proper issue.
Yeah.
Because something has just got in the way.
Yeah, you can't think clearly in that situation. I think the brain has this wonderful ability to negatively forecast the future.
Yeah.
All the time. And the trouble is, we can't tell the difference. Our brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what isn't. So we'll get a stress response as if that is true and is actually going to happen, rather than something that may not actually happen in the first place. Yeah. And just like we were talking about the solution-focused approach, there's a lot of reassurance from taking small steps to move forward, to reassure yourself and to almost take that a little bit of stress out of your bucket. So, in terms of that sort of the brain structure, and there's something called your autonomic nervous system.
Yeah.
Is that something you've come across before?
Yes, I've heard of it.
Yeah. And so there are two wings of it, and that will relate to something that we can talk about, almost like traffic light tolerance.
Okay.
And we'll part that, and we'll come to that in a second, because we're going to use that as a system for talking through how your sort of stress shows up and that kind of thing like that. So what you've got two wings. You've got your sympathetic nervous system as one wing of your autonomic nervous system, and your parasympathetic nervous system on one side, on the other side. Now, your sympathetic nervous system is something that you would associate with your fight and flight response. So, for example, if you went out here and there was a zombie outside, your sympathetic nervous system would kick in to make you safe and work very quickly to, you're going to fight it out or you're going to hop it, or something like that. So that, in your sort of stress response, is much like the accelerator pedal. The more you're leaning into your sympathetic nervous system, the more stressed you're going to be, the more you might going to be running away, or the more aggressive you might want to be, and that kind of thing. That's the gas pedal. Okay. The other side is your parasympathetic nervous system, and that you can think about as being like the handbrake on your stress response.
Okay.
And the parasympathetic nervous system has a lot to do with something called your vagus nerve. Have you ever come across the vagus nerve before? And that's a massive nerve that serves a wide range of parts of your body. And if you imagine a line being roughly where your diaphragm is, the top part of it is called the ventral vagus state.
Okay.
Now, that is associated with something called rest and digest. And when that's triggered, your system is not obsessed with just surviving. It's okay to live. It's okay. You can get on with what you want to do, live normally, you can digest your food, your system is not stressed, in inverted commas. The bottom bit below the sort of the diaphragm line is something called your dorsal vagus state. And that is where, if you've been overwhelmed by stress for a long period of time, you might be in a position where you might be in some sort of freeze or shut down, or start to get things like gut issues and things like that. Some people with IBS might be able to empathise with the idea of chronic stress and how that will hit your gut area. So if you imagine that being roughly attributed to traffic lights. Okay, so if you think that the green part, where you're feeling safe and connected and happy and able to do the job, where you've got your neocortex engaged and you can think clearly and do what you need to do, that is the ventral vagus bit. That's the green bit. We're happy, we're safe. The yellow bit, moving up there, you might be triggered and wanting to having a stress response. It might be the yellow section. And the red section is you've got the dorsal vagus and you're frozen and overwhelmed, almost like you can't move. So that is roughly what you would describe as the traffic lights of tolerance. And when I work with people, I help them to confidently work out where they might be on that grid and how to move themselves upwards or downwards as necessary.
Yeah.
And that's what we would do in terms of mapping your nervous system here today. So the thing that we all need to know is what the world is like for you, how it feels to be when you're calm, connected, grounded. How do you feel? What's the world like for you when you're in a good place, everything's in line? What's the world like for you?
I don't know that I've ever actually thought about that question.
Yeah.
It just is. I guess if I'm just relaxed, happy, I will become very much a glass half full. I will look out of the back window at home and say, well, aren't we lucky? We live in the countryside. I've got a nice sized garden. There's lots going on around there. I'm in a warm, comfortable house. I'm married. I've got a tremendous daughter. I'll count all of my blessings when the world is good. I don't do that often enough. I do, and I actually catch myself sometimes thinking, "Crikey, I haven't thought about this for a while." But I think partly because a lot of the time we spend all of our lives looking at what other people have got and whatever else, how well they're doing, particularly with social media. But when the world's a good place, it's a matter of, I've got a lot. I think I'm happy with the sort of person that I am, and I'm happy with my lot.
So what you're talking about there is a real sense of contentment,
Yeah.
and a gratitude and appreciation of what you've got.
Yeah.
And would you say that the world is a dangerous place in that situation, or is it a place of opportunity?
Oh, I think it's definitely a place of opportunity. Given the analogies that you've drawn, I can see that it's dangerous because you've effectively let your guard down, or you've let your guard down. So it might be a dangerous place, but it doesn't feel like a dangerous place. So if you consider that in that state you are slightly naive because you don't appreciate the dangers that there are, the world is a dangerous place as a result of that naivety. But in my mind at that point, it wouldn't be a dangerous place. It would just be, there's a great deal of beauty in the world and a great deal to appreciate. Something you just said hit it. I've had a friend from university who unfortunately died about 15 years ago. And he died from cancer. And I'd spoken to him regularly, and there's a whole group of us friends, we used to meet up. The last time I ever saw him, I didn't realise it at the time, was probably 16, 17 years ago. And I'd had some issues, and I'd come through those issues. And I remember sitting to him saying, do you know what? All of those issues don't really matter, because I'm still married, I've still got my daughter, we're all healthy, and clearly he wasn't. And I didn't realise at the time that he was very close to dying. And when we parted, and I'm not really a hugger, I don't hug, but he stood up and insisted on giving me a huge hug. And I thought he was saying, "Oh great, I'm happy that you're like that." I think he was saying goodbye. But I always come back to that and think, he realised that, even though I didn't realise that what mattered was what I got, he realised it and was happy for me, because I suppose part of it at the time he wasn't going to continue with that. He got it, but he'd also got this illness that was going to see his time. His days were very much numbered at that point.
Yeah.
I guess sometimes the world's a really great place, but you just don't necessarily appreciate it. You can almost vocalise it without actually appreciating just how good it is. And I think that's what I did at that time. And every now and again I think back, well, the good news, he spotted it.
Yeah. Well, I think the good news from what you're describing there, I think if we went back to what you're talking about in terms of a sense of danger because you leave yourself vulnerable, is the good news is, if we go back to that sort of example with the brain in the palm of your hand, and the fact that when that intellectual part of your brain is connected because you don't sense danger all around you and need to protect yourself, means that you're able to make risk assessments of the world around you and think clearly and make reasoned decisions. You're in a place where you can think clearly.
Yeah.
So in a strange kind of counterintuitive way, you're probably safer than you were before, because you can make wise decisions about risk reward in many ways.
Okay.
Is there anything that you particularly like to do that keeps you in that green place, in that feeling of being grounded, appreciative? Are there any activities or interests that you have that help you stay in that green zone?
I have interests as everybody else does. The things that there are two things that are relatively, one short term, one slightly more long term. In the short term, if I've got an issue, then I'll often just take the dog out for a walk. And I know lots of people do that, and they find that quite cathartic. But I had some real issues with stress, real problems with work, just before my friend died, and really wasn't coping at all. And I was really, really very fortunate in as much as a friend had said that he was going out in the mornings before work for a bike ride, only a few miles, to get himself fit. And I thought, well, okay, I'll give that a go. Yeah. Because I'd put on lots of weight. I'd been drinking quite heavily for a long time. And I just found that being on my bike, the only thing I could think about was just how blooming hard cycling is at times.
The top of the thighs burning away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are lots of sayings within cycling, but one of the things is that cycling never becomes easy. You just get faster. So going out on my bike is the thing that I do now to take me away from any stresses or worries, because during the hour, the 3 hours, however long it might be, the only thing that you can think about is essentially where you're going, how fast you might get there, how much it hurts if you're going really fast, and then whereabouts you are. You on a Sunday morning, I'll wake up and go for a bike ride. Other people will be in bed, possibly with a cup of tea and reading the newspaper, and I'll be out in the world, completely surrounded by countryside because of where I live, and enjoying the open air and freedom of that, the sense of freedom that you get from riding the bike. And of course that has knock-on benefits, because I'm slightly fitter than I was when I was much heavier and drinking excessively.
Yeah. What are you, about 35, Richard?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. I thought so.
No, I'm 62, but I would say that I'm probably as fit now as I was in my mid-30s. Yeah. I wasn't for a while, but I've gone back to that, and that has been largely due to cycling. Yeah. But it just takes. That's the thing I go to, and there are times if I find myself going through a stressful time, my wife will spot it, because I will be a slightly different person. I won't realise it necessarily.
That's interesting.
And she'll just say to me, Richard, you need to go for a bike ride. And she'll not push me out of the door, but she'll say, you haven't been for a week, have you? Or you haven't been for a few days. Perhaps you should go for a bike ride. And she sends me out of the door because she recognises the benefits.
So she is like the barometer for your stress level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So your mercury's rising in that situation, and you are sometimes in that yellow zone, that starting to feel edgy, and you might not even notice it perhaps. What would, if we were talking with your wife here and she was in that scene, I said, when Richard's in that yellow zone, what do you think she might say you're like?
She would probably say that I am. Grump is the wrong sort of word. She would say that I am unreasonable, that I'm short with her, that I don't listen. All of the things that men do that women complain about generally, I'm those plus one. I would just not be there. My mind wouldn't be focused on what we were doing, so yes, I would be short with her, not knowingly, not deliberately, not intending to be, but my response would be, I've just about got enough time to answer you and deal with this, rather than, oh, actually I should be listening to what you're saying and thinking about my response.
Which is the opposite scenario to when you're cycling. In the cycling, you have to be, I would imagine, focused on that one thing. You have to be in the moment, otherwise you're going to be under a lorry or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You have no choice but to have your eye on what you're doing and not be somewhere else.
Yeah.
When you're in the yellow zone, you are completely somewhere else, and you're not necessarily present in the moment or just existing while you're probably, based on what you said, thinking about an imagined reality that might be catastrophic somewhere in the future, possibly. I think you're right. I don't think
I'm the only person who has a stressful job who will find themselves in situations where they think, I'm not sure how I'm going to resolve this problem at work.
Yeah.
And they go home with that problem at work in their mind, and they just can't get out of that scenario. They're still thinking about it, and that interrupts your home life. Many years ago, that would result in me jumping in the car at ridiculous o'clock in the morning to come into the office to try and sort a problem, or I think I've got a date that might be approaching, or I've missed, and I know that I can't sleep. So I jump in the car. Nowadays, you can log on from home.
Yeah.
So I log on to the work system, but I did it last night. I had a date that I wasn't sure about, and so I just logged on. I just said to my wife, look, give me half an hour. I just need to go. Oh, right, you got a date. Yeah, she knew what sort of thing it was going to be. I went upstairs, logged on, sorted out any issues I might have, and then I was a more reasonable person. I was more relaxed. I came back downstairs, sat, had a cup of coffee, a chat, watched a bit of TV, and was the sort of person that I'd like to be. Whereas I knew at that point, actually, I did know when I got home that I wasn't thinking about what we were going to have for dinner, or wasn't thinking about what we might do for the evening. I was thinking about work and how long I could actually go through the evening, how long I would survive. I was thinking, I'm not going to sleep this evening.
Yeah.
I'm going to be worried about it. Yeah, so she didn't. I had to do something about it. I don't think she spotted it. She knew there was something wrong, but it was too dark for me. I couldn't go for a bike ride at that point. But so yeah, it was a matter of just trying to find a way of relieving that stress on me.
Yeah.
I don't know about anybody else. Maybe I'm just one of those stress heads, but I can remember dozens and dozens of journeys where it's been 2 a.m, I've not been able to sleep. I thought, well, I'll go to the office and sort this out.
Yeah. So do you think that the advent of VPNs and being able to go in and work from home in any location and be able to dial into your account in Warden Rider is been helpful in being able to have that sort of flexibility to your stress levels, or has it been counterproductive, or is it more complex than that?
In my case, it's been helpful, in as much as I can log on and I can be off, have the problem resolved within a relatively short period of time, rather than the journey into work. Yes, so that in that respect, it's been very helpful. But I'm not one of those people who has their work emails on their phone. I deliberately avoid that because I don't want to be interrupted. If I don't know about a problem, it can wait till tomorrow. If I know about a problem, it needs to be dealt with now.
It dominates your horizon. Well, certainly when I was a head teacher, I remember even things like being in the shower or stuff when I might have been trying to do stuff with my son or anything like that. Sometimes you just can only think about how's that meeting going to go, what you're going to say in that situation, how are you going to do it. And I imagine I can empathise with what you've been describing about when you've been in that yellow zone. If you were thinking about the top 3 things that pushed you into that yellow zone, and this will be different for everybody, what other things do you think that are the buttons that, if you feel comfortable with sharing, obviously, what are the buttons that would be pressed to take you into that yellow space?
It's work stress, and that can encompass all sorts of things. But I suppose work stress, the time limits that we have to work to, and the consequences of you then missing a time limit. And it's not so much, in my case, it's not so much that I've missed a time limit that would cause me an issue. It's the consequence of missing the time limit in relation to the client. Because if I miss a time limit, my client then might end up suing me, but I feel like I've let my client down. And if there's then a consequence of having been negligent at work, having made a mistake at work, I've then potentially let my wife and my daughter down. So I think work is the greatest stress. One of the things that really winds me up, and everybody who knows me will say this, is traffic. I don't know if that's the sort of thing that you're thinking about. but I see all of the time that I'm on a journey, unless it's through, I don't know, the Alps or the Pyrenees or somewhere like that where the scenery is beautiful, as just dead time. So traffic winds me up something chronic.
Yeah.
And I sit on a journey to work. I'll sit and I will shout at cars. It sounds really stupid, but I will sit there and I'll get wound up saying, "This is a 20-minute journey. Why have you all come at the same time as me? Because if you came at different times, we could all make it in 20 minutes. Why is it going to take me 40? Why is it going to take me 40 minutes?
So if that's your stress cup, how much is in that stress cup by 9 a.m. when you've come in?
By 9 a.m. it's pretty much full.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just. I have an issue with traffic lights. If the traffic lights are on, if I'm 10th in the queue at traffic lights and the traffic lights turn green, I'm moving. Why is the guy who's second in the queue waiting for the guy who's first in the queue, and then takes his handbrake off, and then puts it in gear, and then moves on? We can all see the lights. Move together. Don't just. And the other thing that I suppose puts me in that zone, although it's not, it's not. I don't know how to say it. It is unpredictability. I'm a big football fan, and I'll go to a football match, and because the whole experience is what I go for, win or lose. And if you're a football fan, support Coventry, you know that you're going to lose a large proportion of the games you're ever going to be in.
Not this season.
Okay. Well, not this season, but that's an exception, and the bubble hasn't quite burst yet. I'm sure it will burst. But you face that. But I would find myself towards the end of football matches, getting really, really wound up by the fact that I really wanted us to win and didn't want to lose. And I would come away and I'd be completely stressed. I would come home after a football match and I'd be wrung out. I'd have nothing left. So on Saturday evening, that was it. I couldn't. I wasn't like that when I was younger, but certainly in my 40s and 50s, I couldn't go to a football match and then go out in the evening because I just got nothing left. I'd taken everything out of me. And even now, if I watch sports, I can't watch tennis because there are just so many opportunities and so many problems with people losing a point. I can't watch. I want to watch the last 3 or 4 points of a match, but I don't want to watch all the build-up because I don't know where it's going to go. I watch rugby, and I think I don't understand the rules. So something might happen here that I don't understand. I can't predict. I like predictability, and sport I find really difficult to watch now because I can't predict the outcome, and I can't in any way affect the outcome. So I end up getting stressed. Penalty shootout in a football match. That's it. No way. I'm out on the street wandering around, listening to people in their house trying to work out, are they cheering because we've missed a penalty, or we've scored a penalty, or somebody else has missed a penalty. And it's just
there's a lot of variables there outside of your control there that sort of put you in that yellow zone, Richard.
Yeah, it is. I don't necessarily always realise it, but you're right. I'm a control freak, and that's the problem when I go cycling. If I don't have a route or I get lost on my route, I have this idea if I go cycling, and that's the one issue that I ever have with cycling is if I'm going to go somewhere and I go off route, I've planned the perfect ride. I know how long it's going to take us to get there. I know what route we're going to go on. I know what we're going to see. I know what issues we might encounter along the way. If we get lost, it's like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know how to get back from A to B. Can I cycle that far? Is it going to take me too long to get that far? So that of itself can sometimes become an issue. I had it relatively recently when I was cycling with my daughter, that I planned the route, but then on my bike computer I couldn't actually see it, and was worried about. I got wound up by getting lost, and then that means that I react really badly to input from anybody else and input from drivers. I'll snap at drivers, and I'll stop and I'll confront drivers when I'm on a bike ride sometimes. If they've cut me up, or they've turned across me, or they've just not realised I'm there, not given me enough room. I think I'm a bit of a
So
a
really,
bit of a nightmare.
So actually, what you are describing, if we go right back to that situation, that talking here, you would think that isn't me in many ways. That your amygdala is your sympathetic system. The gas pedal is pushed down, and then you can't think straight, and then you sort of you've given the steering wheel to your system, to your survival instinct, and you've either got aggression or running away, and that's the response.
Yeah, absolutely. I find myself apologising all the time for things that I don't recognise in me. I don't think I'm not that person. Why have I done that? I'm quite a reasonable person. Yeah. I want to enjoy these things, and I just, because of my reaction to things, I find that I become somebody that I suppose I recognise now, but I don't want to recognise. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
I just, for that moment, I've lost control.
But what we've got here is and this is the beauty of doing this sort of activity with somebody, and if I was with a client, it would be good that what we've described are things that take you into yellow that are predictable.
Yeah.
That they are things that we could reasonably look at your diary, and I'd almost identify with some dots and say, this is where your sympathetic nervous system is going to kick in here, potentially. And from there we can then make active choices about how we might bring you into the top of green, on the edge, take you the other side of the yellow and maybe into the top end of green, and feeling a little bit more connected again. And we might explore that in just a minute. So the top of that traffic light, the red zone, that dorsal vagus zone, is that frozen, that shut down. Something so overwhelming has happened that you just feel like you just can't operate. Even people on the outside might think you're functioning, but inside you just can't handle it anymore. Have there been any times in your life that you feel comfortable to share that might have happened to you, that you can think, that was me at that time in my life, now I look back?
I was a partner in another business, and for one reason or another, and I'm not wishing to point the finger at anybody, because everybody has their own version of history. The business was not doing, I didn't think it was doing particularly well, and I was under lots of pressure in that, and was coming home most evenings and probably consuming a bottle of wine. I didn't realise that it had become such a problem, but it had, and it was just a way of trying to unwind from the daily pressures. And lots of people will have very stressful situations at work, and will have to find some way of relieving that. And mine was that I ended up turning to alcohol, and I hadn't realised it was such a problem until I was away from that situation, and it was a sense of relief. So yeah, I think that's, and I wasn't in control at that point. I couldn't make sensible decisions. I was looking around for somebody to try to help me, but I didn't know what I wanted them to help me with. I didn't know whether I wanted them to resolve the issues that I thought there were with the business, or whether I wanted them to resolve problems that I was having personally in terms of how I was dealing with that. So if you'd have said, well, yeah, can I help? I might have said, well, actually, can you lend me £500,000? Or I might have said, actually, can you just sit and have a chat with me? I don't know what it was, but I was completely unreasonable to be around at that point.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know. I was so in such a state that I couldn't actually think about what my problems were. So I couldn't address them. All I could do was try to escape from them.
Yeah.
Which is where the alcohol came in.
Yeah. Do you find that you often find clients at Warden Rider who may be sitting in that area, especially in sort of your department, that may be in that position that they're in, overwhelmed themselves?
Potentially. I was thinking about this on the way to work this morning, actually. Because I'm a personal injury lawyer, I am always a distressed purchase. Nobody wants to go and see a personal injury lawyer because it means that they've had an injury and they're in pain. And lots of clients will want to have things resolved very quickly. Finance is only going to help so far, but lots of people will have very serious, life-changing injuries, and they want help both in terms of medical treatment. They want direction or help to point them towards the right medical treatment. They want an answer to why it happened. They want reassurance it's not going to happen to other people. And then there is this whole idea that they want to be compensated for what's happened to them. And then there's this system to do all of that is completely alien to everybody. Solicitors, we deal with it all day, every day. But for the average person that comes through the door, this is the only time, apart from when they might buy and sell a house, and maybe if they get divorced or something, but most people will only use a solicitor once or twice in their entire lives. And this is actually a choice that they've come to us because they just don't know how to deal with things. So there are lots of people that we see who generally find themselves just not knowing what to do. And the result of that I see regularly is that people become unable to make a decision for themselves. I'll have clients phone up and say, this has happened, what should I do next? And it's not a legal question. There's this thing that's going on outside of their control, and they don't know how their normal life and their normal decisions will affect this thing that's going on that they don't understand. And I sometimes say to people, if you're going to tie your shoelaces, you don't need to call me. It's not that trivial. That's completely over-trivializing the issues that they have. But people will look to us to help them make decisions that, without the injury, they would make in a heartbeat. And sometimes without the claim, they would make in a heartbeat. If they'd fallen down the stairs at home and broken the same leg, they would have no issue whatsoever with making the right decision for themselves. But because they've got a claim going on, they actually find it very, very difficult to make the decision, because there's always this issue. There's something there outside of my control. How am I going to affect all of that? Am I making the right decision?
And do you ever, just as a neutral person just sitting here, the way you might have been describing about how somebody was responding to the thing that's happened to them, and the claim that's been brought, and the way they may be feeling about needing or not knowing what they should or ask from you because it's overwhelmed them in such a high degree, there are parallels with your personal experiences from way back when you were feeling quite overwhelmed. They've got similarities.
Yes, absolutely. It's just the issue is just not knowing where the answers are, and not knowing how to deal with them. We all like to have a degree of clarity, and not having that clarity can throw us completely out of sync. So not knowing where to find the answers is as difficult as the problem itself.
So hopefully there's some techniques that we could discuss now that would help in that situation, either in yellow or red, that would be helpful to try and bring you closer to the green. The nearer to green we are, the more you can make decisions for yourself. And some of those are identifying resources so that you can start to plan to tap into those resources at different times. And some of those people might be, some of those strategies are identifying figures in your life, either real or imaginary, that occupy certain positions. So, for example, a wise figure. Someone in your past who might have, or present, that you feel has a lot of wisdom, that is a knowledge base. Is there anybody who you feel either in the past has been a source of wisdom for you, or someone who might be presently in your life that's a source of wisdom for you, that might be that resource at that time that you could send a text to, who could provide you with some wisdom, or you could reflect back on what they might say? Tough question, I know.
Yeah. I guess the wisest person. Yeah, there certainly have been people, and there are people that I would say, yeah, I would turn to, ask for some advice. They've not, and those people have at times changed. The one constant is my wife, but to an extent, I suppose. I don't always like to ask her for help, because it's burdening the same person time and time again with issues. But there have been people, generally people who are older than me, who at times I thought, yes, well, I can turn to this person and ask them for some advice on issues. Yes, so there have been. I mean, I can't say that I'm going to name them now, but certainly there are people that where I've had that.
Yeah.
But again, it's a matter of, even if there is somebody that's wise.
Yeah. So
can you do you want to? I suppose I'm very much of the stiff upper lip.
Stoic
generation. Yes, stoic is the word that's very popular here. I tend not to ask for the help.
I think that there's some different characters that we go through, because the idea is that when you sort of map your nervous system, a bit like we have for you, Richard, in terms of what life is like in that yellow, that green, yellow, and red situation, is you create a framework so that, a bit like, for example, when you said your wife recognises that you are edgy in the yellow and says, "Get on your bike, Richard," that resource in your life has been a strength that's helped you get back to green. So these are individuals that you can go, do you know what? I'm having a tough time. My first action, because remember we talked before that taking a step towards that catastrophic situation and taking the first step can make you feel a bit better.
Yeah.
That, for example, if there was somebody in, whoever might be listening, that they identify that that's my source of wisdom, the text or the phone call to that person and go for coffee with that person could be the first step towards making them feel a bit better in that moment. And that resource is something you can tap into. So the next question would be, and I think I might already know the answer, would be a nurturing figure. Someone who, I know you're not a hugger, who is the metaphorical, who would be the person in your life. And it might be a stretch, you might not be able to think of someone right now, but it's that person who might metaphorically be the person who puts their arm around you and says, "Richard is going to be okay."
Well, I probably have provided you with the answer already.
Yeah. And for some people, it could be someone in the past. They can think, "What would so and so say? What would so and so do?" or something like that. It can be, and I guess that can change at different points in your life.
Yes. Yeah. There have been metaphorical huggers in my life, and I can think of certain people that would have just told me to take a breath and let's deal with what the real issue is here, not all of the perceived issues that you're creating for yourself. So there have been people that would just put their arm around me. Yeah,
good. So the other one would be something like a protector figure, the person who's going to rattle the sabre on your behalf.
Well, apart from the obvious one that we've already discussed, I think my certainly my mum would have been that person, but then I guess you'd hope that most mums or dads were like that. That's not to say my dad wasn't, because he was, but he didn't necessarily show it as much as my mum might do. Whereas my mum was behind me 100%, all day, every day. Possibly too much. Who knows? But I guess there have been people that would be there fighting my corner for me all the way.
Yeah. And what you would then do is you could map out different personas. And so you could have things like maternal figures or paternal figures in your life, and you would map out resources in your life, and do you remember when you were talking about that gratitude, that appreciation of the richness around you?
Yeah.
You can then go, in your moment of crisis, you know who to go and speak to when.
Yeah.
That's a good place to go. So, coming back to those things that press your buttons, that we were able to sort of reasonably predict what will put you in that yellow zone. Let's choose one of them, and maybe proactively know what we're going to do if that's filling up your stress cup. Which would you like to choose? What could we lean into that we might be able to think of what we do to proactively sidestep it or mitigate it when it happens?
Well, there's the obvious one to choose, I suppose, is the one that I have every day, because I travel to work every day. So I'm so stressed in traffic. And I've tried lots of things, simple things. I'll leave earlier to be less traffic. I won't have the worry about getting here at a particular time. I'm a great classical music fan, but the radio is normally set to the radio channels that other people listen to, but I'll put the classical music on because that tends to calm you slightly. So I think I've tried to find. I must sound like a right nutcase.
You sound like a human.
But there you go. I'm complete. I'm a complete stress head, and I know that I've got a very short fuse in that situation. So the one that I would like to get into a car with other people, and those other people know that on that journey, I'm just going to make sensible decisions about where we're going to go and what speed we're going to go at, and not spend half of my time worrying about whether we're going to be late, whether I'm going to be shouting at other drivers, or the traffic, or the traffic lights, or the temporary roadworks, or whatever it might be, that is going to mean that the journey for them is really unpleasant. On my own, it's not so much of an issue because I've only myself to answer. So when other people come in the car with me, and they just think, I don't want to go in the car because at some point, Richard is going to say something to somebody, and they'll sit there and say, they can't hear you. You're shouting at people. They have no idea what you're saying. It's just yourself you're winding up. So that's what I would like to be able to deal with. I am terrible on journeys. I'm terrible in traffic, and I'd like to know how I do it because to me, although I can predict that it might happen at some point, when it does, it's like that, and I don't have the self-control in that moment. I've done it before I've said anything, even though it's predictable that any particular situation, I don't know what that situation is going to be on that journey, but somewhere on that journey there is likely to be something that's going to press my button. So
there are two things to chat about there. There are some things that, and you may have tried these, I don't know, we'll explore this, but and see how it's gone for you. There are some things you can do in the moment that will help be like a reliever that tries to get you from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, if that makes sense. Essentially signalling, it's okay, I can get on with my day. And I'll also share how, for example, the solution-focused hypnotherapy approach, or even solution-focused therapy, how that operates. And you can see how, if that's you've identified a goal, a destination, a solution that you want to see, and what that process would look like. Because it is not something that you'd be able to just go like that and it's gone. It's something that incrementally you create a new neural pathway that, a bit like a toboggan run, if that makes sense, or something like that you are creating a groove and a knowledge of a route that is you get more and more confident on, and then the old habit would sort of drop away. But it takes time to create that groove little by little that is a bit better over time. So here are some things that might be handy, that might be helpful. Do you ever do anything with your breathing when you're driving?
No.
So there is something that you could try, because in the action of being mindful about your breathing, that is stimulating that parasympathetic system. So there's something you can try called box breathing. And if you think 4, 4, 4, 4, if you were to inhale for 4, and then count to 4, hold it for 4, exhale for 4, and just keep like a loop of 4 and concentrate on that and keep counting, that sort of that keeps you in a calmer situation. That sort of stimulates that, so you can try and regulate your breathing patterns.
Okay.
So that might be something that might be helpful, especially if you think, I've just pulled up to this traffic lights, let's do some breathing, and see if that could be a proactive tactic that you could use potentially. The other thing that you could try and do is there's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 strategy you could use either before or after, and quite literally you're always sort of creating a situation where you are using your senses to remind you that you are in a safe space, and you don't need to defend yourself, and you don't need that amygdala to kick in and have a stress response. So literally you could potentially have, I don't know, you have a post-it on your dashboard that reminds you to do this or something like that. So it'd be 5 things you can see around you. You could even relate it to the gratitudes that you were talking about. So 4 things you can hear. You go through the senses and try and pick them up. And just like you were talking about in that moment when you're cycling, and you have to be in the moment to be able to not fall under a lorry.
Yeah.
This is creating you being in the moment in the car, which is being immediately aware of what your surroundings are like, rather than what that bloke 3 cars is up at that pedestrian crossing doing.
Yeah.
So using your senses like that could be helpful. The other thing that it might be worth a try is, have you got any sweets in your car?
No.
Could be worth having a sweet, trying a boiled sweet. Because the act of having saliva in your mouth, have you ever had a situation where you're stressed and it gets dry?
Yeah.
The opposite of that is having lots of saliva. You are telling it's time for eating. It's rest and digest time.
Okay.
So there's something called hypnotherapy, which is the action of using hypnotherapy instead of anaesthetic. So some people can have medical treatments without being anaesthetised. And the first thing that they do in that is they must always, when you're doing that, is you're always making sure that you've got saliva in your mouth, because you're telling your parasympathetic system to not go into a stress response. So having a nice boiled sweet, nice stuck on something that keeps you a bit of saliva in your mouth could also be a really helpful strategy that might just trigger that right part of your parasympathetic nervous system that is hopefully might bring it down a little bit. The other thing that is also is an ice cold drink of water as well. That might be really helpful if you've got a really cold drink. Cold water therapy also helps as well.
I like the first 3. I'm a man of a certain age. If I have an ice cold drink, I'll need to stop.
But at least you'll be thinking about something else, won't you?
It'll be. So I've got to pull over. I've got to stop because I've had a nice cold drink to calm me down.
It's a mistake giving you a drink in a podcast.
But the journey's going to take longer because I've got to plan for the toilet stops I've got to make sure that I'm calm on the way to work. I see that makes some sense. There's certainly I suppose it's remembering. It would be remembering to do this. I'm up to try anything. I always have been. So it would be a matter of just remembering to do those things. Because at the moment when I'm in the car, and I know this is not meant to be a therapy session, but when I'm in the car, my solution is not, well, what can I do to calm myself down? It's, what can I do to get that person out of the way? What can I do to get that person to make more reasonable decisions about the way that they're going to drive, or how long they're going to drive, or how fast they're going to do? I find myself sitting at junctions thinking I can pull out, there's bags of room one way, well that car's, if it just went a bit faster I could pull out really really easily, but just come on, just 2 or 3 miles faster, that would be ideal, then I can come out. But no, you're dawdling and I'm in a hurry. It's it's a matter of trying to unpick all of that and just think, actually, no, just if you can do the 4 by 4 by 4 by 4, that would take my mind off it. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 would take my mind off it, and certainly there's no reason why boiled sweets can't be in the car. I mean, my wife chews gum when she's in the car all the time, and that's probably partly because she says it helps her concentrate, but it might have the same effect because she is not like me in the car at all.
It's worth a try. Let me explain how you couple that. If you couple that in with like there is solution focused brief therapy and there's solution focused hypnotherapy, which is what I do, and you can see how this sort of makes logical sense. That if you were going for a series of sessions, and this is just a podcast, it's an artificial scenario, but you would say that in a session you would have an opportunity where you scale yourself on a scale of 0 to 10.
Yeah.
Now, if we're saying in the situation, you've come to see me because I get road rage, and my solution is I want to be able to drive to the car, drive to work, and not have lost my rag, and that's 10 out of 10 for me. That's my solution. That's my goal. And so, since I saw you, where are you on that scale? Like, oh well, this week I've been a 5, say.
Yeah.
But actually, through what you're doing is you then create yourself a little mini goal. Say, okay, so by the time I see you next time, what are you going to do differently that's a 6? And it could just be just a teeny tiny step, and you're working on just making it a little bit better each time. Because what you are doing is you're just laying down the groundwork for over time creating a new habit. And obviously habit is repetition.
Yeah.
And so often, that gives you just a little bit of accountability in that system, because so often we go, okay, I tried that breathing once and it didn't work, so I won't do it again.
Yeah.
Or actually it probably needs, I don't know what the figure is, how many times you need to do something before you master it? I can't quite remember, it's thousands of times,
Yes.
Like practicing the putt or whatever it is to make it happen. That literally is the same principle, but the fact is, when you are solution focused, you are not focusing on the problem, which is that driver that you're trying to deal with. It's focusing on the solution and the positive thing that you can do, that you've got control of, to move yourself towards that end point. And each time you move yourself forward just a little bit, and that's helpful, because that will help you be more green by the time you get into work. And hopefully you'll make better decisions, and there might be ripples out that mean that there's less things that put you in the yellow.
Yeah. Okay.
So what we've done today is we've just had a little bit of a light touch sort of smorgasbord of sort of nervous system chit chat about how you might want to navigate how stress operates within your nervous system, and how you start to think about positive strategies for navigating yourself back down to the green section. Are there any things that sort of observations you've got from the conversations we've had that might be interesting takeaways, Richard?
I think just understanding, having some understanding of how it works, having insight, as we often like to say, having insight into how it's happening, rather than thinking it's something that's completely out of your control, means that you can, I suppose, look at the various components of the issues that you've got, and realise that it's not all out of your control necessarily. So there would be things that you can try to avoid getting into the situation which is yellow and red. So breaking it down like that is what I would take away from it.
Yeah.
Because having that degree of insight, that degree of understanding about where it comes from, and how it can escalate, means that you can hopefully I can recognise the signs in time for me to do something about them. Seek help, whether it's from friends and family or professionals or whatever, but realise that there is something going on that, to a degree, could be beyond my control if I don't reach out in some way. Knowing that maybe just in getting into the yellow now, but I can zoom into the red without recognising that I'm there and thinking, I don't want people to have to tell me I'm there. If I can recognise it myself, then I can perhaps ask for some assistance.
And that's the beauty of moving towards some sort of system where there's a common language.
Yeah.
When you've got that in a workplace, you've got lots of people who can recognise that in each other and have a common language that are able to refer to something, and you can have each other's backs, and there is that opportunity there. Or even equally recognise that in your clients and know that when they're in a certain situation you ain't going to get a straight answer out of them.
Yeah.
Unless there's a way of, without being glib, sucking them into and bringing them down into engaging the right part of their nervous system, and then you might get a sensible answer that is better for you and everybody.
Yeah, I think certainly I will recognise situations I will see situations where I have work colleagues who are finding things difficult, and I'll know why they're finding them difficult. Lots of people wouldn't, but I've been there myself in that work situation. I say, well, this is likely to be a response, and I will see clients who are having very difficult times, very difficult situations that they find themselves in, and will recognise that and realise that my approach to them needs to factor in the fact that things at the moment are very, very difficult for them. So recognising that is great. It's recognising in yourself that's the more difficult task. A colleague's got a court date coming up. There's lots of work needs to be done. They're not sure how they're going to do it. I can see that. But when I'm in that situation, I will have a different response to the one that I might have to my colleague who is in that situation, where I might say, well, can I help? Can I offer something for you? Or I'll step back and say, I need to let you get on with it. I don't need to interrupt you. You can make a judgment about that when it's yourself. It's very, very difficult to sit back, take a deep breath. Let's realise what is important in this situation. Realise that actually I can get through this situation before you've got to the yellow and the red stage, and you can't do anything about it. That's the thing to take away. That you can see those situations in other people, and it's much easier to recognise in them and offer help than it is to recognise it in yourself at a time when you can do something about it.
Yeah, because you're in the wrong part of your brain to do it.
I would always say, look, I've had a really bad temper all of my life. I can't control it. And that's probably an excuse in some respects. Whereas actually, if I thought about it, understanding that as you sort of describe it, as this sort of traffic light system, understanding where I am and thinking I don't have to go to red, I can get myself into the green again by taking a different approach is very helpful. Whether I'll continue to recognise it in a week's time is another matter. But right now that makes a great deal of sense. Yes. Yeah.
Well, in that case, I really do hope it stays with you for a lot longer than a week. But Richard, thank you so much.
You know what I'm doing on the way home tonight, don't you? I'm doing my 4x4x4x4.
You are doing box breathing. Love it. Thank you very much, Richard. See you soon. Thank you.